G'day folks, welcome to the Whimsy Trail tutorials. Today we're going to make a fairy house diorama from scratch with mostly recycled materials. I start by getting some old packaging and cutting all the folds and creases out so that I can have some nice flat pieces of cardstock. And then I outline the shape that I want the fairy house to look like on one of them. Now it doesn't have to be perfect, they just have to match up with one another. We want the printed side of the cardboard to be facing inwards. So now I've got the two that match, I just do some little fine trims to get them to match one another. And what I've got here is some scrap pieces of wood that are 1 centimeter by 1 centimeter. And I'm just using them to fill out the center of the house. And then I glue the pieces of card that we've just cut out on either side, like so. And now I get some old coffee stirrers or ice cream sticks and cut them into about 3 or 4 centimeter pieces so that we can then glue them on the side of the house as some framing or cladding. Once I've cut them, I get some fine sandpaper and just sand down the edges just so that they're a nice smooth finish, which will make them look better when we are dry brushing up the textures in one of the last stages. Now take your time with this, it'll be worth it in the end, it'll make the job look better in the end. And once you've got a bunch of them, I just glue them onto the side there like that, no particular spacing or order, and they don't have to match each other because they'll be covered soon with some pieces of cardboard for walls anyway. Okay, set it to dry. Now I just make a little door frame and a window, and I just draw the shape of the door using a tongue depressor, and then glue, I think it's 5 coffee stirrers together with some wood glue, and then that gives me the shape of the door. And then I just make a weirdly shaped window for the same way. Just take your time when you're cutting with sharp blades like this because it's really easy to slip and cut your fingers off. And you don't want to do that or cut yourself. Just focus, pay attention, take your time, enjoy the build. As you can see there, I've just glued the 4 of those pieces together onto a little backing piece, and now we've got a nice functional window with a little ledge. Easy, easy. I use wood glue when I'm making the accessories because it has a much tighter bond and lasts for longer. A little bit more expensive, but it's worth it in the end because you get a better finished product. Now you only need to use a tiny little bit of the wood glue. So you can see I've just squeezed a bit out there on a lid and then apply it with a toothpick as needed. Now we're going to make the walls and the tiles, and then again we just start with some old packaging. Cut out all the kinks in the folds so that we've got some nice bits of flat packaging. I was scraping off some little glue bits there as well. And then I just measure the side of the roof and cut it to fit and glue it on. I'm just back to using the PVA glue for this now. So glue the 2 sides on, and then I get a rectangle that's maybe 6 centimeters long and score it in the middle so that when I fold it, it gives a nice crisp fold, and that seals in the roof nicely. And then I just do the same for the bottom walls and set them to dry. Now we're going to make some roof tiles, and to do this I cut rectangles that are about 4 centimeters by 2 or 3 centimeters. Like so. And then once I've got those smaller rectangles, I cut about halfway up and about 1/2 centimeter away from one another so that it gives the appearance of tiles on the bottom half. There you can see like that. I stagger them as well so that if you were to lie them on top of one another, the cuts wouldn't be in the same place. Might not make sense, but when you're cutting it, it'll all click. The penny will drop. Many pennies will drop. Take your time, cut out as many as you need. It's usually about double the length of the window because we glue them down like so. Put a layer of glue on the base of the roof and then a little strip across the top. And then we just want to lay the tiled bits over the non-tiled bits of the previous tile. Gosh. Yeah, I heard it. Until we get to the top, and we're going from the bottom to the top. And then we do both sides and do a cap piece as well, like we did with the previous layer, where we get a 6cm by 4cm rectangle, score it down the middle, fold it across the top, and then glue it on. To keep that shape as well when we're doing the cap, I put a little peg on there, just so that it holds its bond. Now we're working on the base. I've just got a piece of plywood that was some scraps from when my friend redid his shelves. And I've also got some scrap styrofoam there. And I'm just cutting it off into little pieces, breaking little chunks off the side so that it looks more like natural rocks. And I'm just eyeballing how I want it to look. The point we're trying to do here is, or the thing we're trying to do here is to just break up that flat horizontal surface. And then I just glue the house in place. And I'm going to start with putting some PVA glue in some of the places near the raised parts, and then some medium-sized rocks, and then I blend them in with some fine sand. Next we're going to make some texture paint, and we do this by using the colour we want, mixing in some fine dried leaves, some fine sand and rocks, a bit of water and a bit of PVA glue, and then we want to mix it up so that it has the consistency of, it's thicker than milk but not as thick as custard. And if it's not as thick, if it's not as thick as you want it, you add more glue and paint. If it's too thick, add more water. And once we've got all that mixed together, see, I'm covering up the bits of printed cardstock on the back there, sort of sculpting most of the textures onto that. And then for the flat parts of the wall, just painting it really. Like, there are little bits of texture, but I'm trying to scoop up most of the textures into the side parts there just to blend it in nicely. And once I've done that, I give all the ground a cover with the same thing. And most of this will get covered anyway with grass and other sand, but we want it to be a natural colour so that if we do miss some spots, it just looks like something natural coming through. Now I'm doing the door and the window with an undercoat of the same brown, and we'll eventually go from the light to dark method with dry brushing and overbrushing to make the textures pop and to give it a bit of depth. You can see I'm doing that now on the walls and on the rocks that we've made with the styrofoam. And you can see even just that one layer of the lighter brown with a dry brush makes all those textures stand out heaps nicer. I'm going to do the same thing with the roof, but we're starting with just a plain black undercoat and really get in there so that you cover all of the unpainted cardboard. And I'm just touching up those middle bits because as the paint and the glue dries, it shrinks. So you just want to go in there and do some touch-ups. And then we glue the door and the window onto it. Now we're doing our first layer of colour on the roof, and we're just doing an overbrush of a burnt sienna. And we want to do an overbrush so that bits of the previous layer still stick through, like you could see there with the black. Now we're putting down some PVA glue and water, and we're going to make a little path with some sand going up to the door, and then the other parts we're just going to put some of the darkest green flocking that we've got. And you can learn how to make this flocking in my How to Make Your Own Materials video on this channel. And once all those are done with the first layer, then I put some moss as some shrubs. We put them up on the front of the house as well as a little one just in the growth there. And then to get it all to set, we mix it with iso alcohol and then mix PVA glue with water at 1:1. And I drop it on there. And then once that's set, we do the next layer, which is a lighter shade of the green flocking, and then some fine dried leaves to blend it all in. And again, you can learn how to do this in my making materials video. And then we seal it all with the isopropyl alcohol and PVA glue, and boom. So I decided that the front wall needed a bit of breaking up. It was too flat. So So I just put a bead of hot glue there and then laid some moss on it, and then a bead of hot glue over the doorway, and now I'm just pressing some aquarium pebbles into it. And we'll paint this in as well so that it blends in with the rest of the wall. But on the vines here, I'm just putting little drops of PVA glue and then sprinkling some dyed sawdust to make rose textures. Now we're doing the final dry brush edge highlight, which is just a white and a very, very fine dry brush. Don't put too much paint on it because it's really easy to ruin it by putting too much paint on, and then you have to start again. Not the end of the world if you do put too much paint on, you can just start again. But with the cardboard, the more glue and paint you put on there, the more chance you have of it warping when it gets soaked. So just bear that in mind. Less is more. It's easier to add more paint than it is to take it off or it is to start again. And then for the final step, I just paint the vertical parts of the base black just to make it stand out and to set it all off. And then there we go. We've got a finished A-frame fairy house tutorial. And we made it with mostly scratch built and recycled materials. Here's some up close shots. Unfortunately, a couple of the pebbles of the arch fell out, but you get the idea. Now you can build this as well, and I'd love for you to use any of these methods with your own creations, and if you do, please tag me on the social medias. Thank you very much for watching. This has been really, really fun. I've learnt heaps and you've all been awesome. I hope the rest of your day is awesome and you're feeling powerful.